After 8 days of protests, the governor of Puerto Rico has just announced he will not run for re-election next year. Now, this announcement comes amid an uproar over leaked private chat messages that were criticized as homophobic, disparaging toward women, and insensitive to the victims of Hurricane Maria. Let's get right to CNN senior international correspondent Nick Payton-Walsh, who's joining us by phone right now from Puerto Rico. Nick, what happened?
Well, it's kind of extraordinary, Anna. I have to tell you, we have been with some anticipation most of the afternoon thinking something was going on inside the governor's mansion here, anticipation that he might be about to resign his post immediately. But what he's essentially done is said that he's not going to run again in an election which everyone thinks he's going to lose anyway. It's extraordinary that he would take to this Facebook message and make such a defiant statement, digging his heels in, saying he wants to continue serving the people. Now, there's no polling here, obviously, but as I say, incredibly hard to find a voice in his support. The key bit here is possibly you might see an argument that really, as some senior officials in the political elite have suggested, it's not clear what would come next if he did step down immediately. Now, the crowds here that we're seeing are furious generally at the political elite. At decades, what they see is political corruption, mismanagement, how they've been looked after Hurricane Maria in 2017, but also years before that as well. And the chat groups, which emerged just in the past weeks or so, in which he and Roselló's inner circle were seen being derogatory of LGBT community, of women, of virtually anybody you can think about, frankly, in sort of one place I described in a very sophomoric sort of way. That sparked the fuel, really. That sparked the sort of a dry forest fire, if you like, of discontent.
For his first one-on-one interview since the scandal began, the governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Roselló, is with us live from San Juan. Governor, thank you.
Thank you, Shepard. Thank you for the opportunity.
Representatives in Congress on both the left and the right, Democrats and Republicans, have called for you to resign. The largest newspaper in Puerto Rico has said it's time for you to listen to the people and step down now. Here's what the President of the United States said about your government today.
The Congress of the United States handed him $92 billion. And that $92 billion is in the hands of incompetent people and very corrupt people. But the governor has done a terrible job.
It's not $92 billion, but the point is made and well made, and now 1 million people are on the street saying, get out. Why won't you?
Well, we've heard that there is obviously disappointment.
That's not what I've heard, Governor, with great respect.
We've been working.
I've not heard that there's disappointment. I've heard Puerto Rican after Puerto Rican after Puerto Rican watching multiple satellite feeds and speaking with our people who are in Puerto Rico today and listening to journalists from other organizations, and I've not heard the word disappointment. I've heard numerous Puerto Ricans say that you have disrespected them, that you have not led them properly, that you've made fun of them, that you've made light of them, that they no longer trust in your leadership. For example, you got 660,000 votes to be governor of Puerto Rico. By all estimates, there are more than that on the streets of Puerto Rico today demanding that you step down.
Listen, I'm not making light of the demonstrations. I'm establishing that we've established what we want to do, the efforts that are ongoing, and what we need in order to fix this problem. There is a problem. We started to fix it, and we've already presented a plan. Now, I want to make sure that we can collaborate with the federal government, particularly with some of the federal resources that are coming over here. I've established and I challenge that we can get a federal funds SAR over here in Puerto Rico and in all of the agencies so that these funds can keep on moving. These are the proposals that we have, and my objective is that we can establish this conversation.
These sound like reasonable proposals for an island in crisis. I'm sure they do to a lot of our viewers. But you're eliminating the past few weeks and the last 10 days of demonstrations and the widespread calls and all that you've said. You said, I have apologized for my mistakes. That's how you've called them repeatedly. That's what you call them in a news conference that you held just the other day. Mistakes are things that you do that you didn't mean to do, or that you did by accident or in error, and then you go back and you correct them. 900 pages of attacks on people of your own island are arguably not mistakes. They're a pattern. And when you look at that pattern, if that were some other politician other than you, what would you say about that person? Would you want that person leading you after all that you said to those other officials whom you've now dismissed summarily?
Well, I would want to showcase my record. Those are words. I would also showcase my actions, the efforts that we've made in Puerto Rico, the challenges that we had that we're now starting on a recovery effort, that we've done a restructuring effort with a fiscal oversight board over here, that we've reduced the cost, the expenditures on government because Puerto Rico was in a fiscal crunch, that since we started in the administration, we've made strides on the economy and elsewhere, but mostly we've made policy changes that are significant for women, for LGBTQ, for other sectors that are recognized as some of the biggest steps in those efforts. So again, I used words that I have apologized for, but I've also taken significant actions in the direction of helping vulnerable sectors in our population.
Have you appropriately apologized? Have you apologized to Ricky Martin? Have you apologized to the survivors of the people who died in the storm that ravaged your island? Have you appropriately come forward and asked for forgiveness and a hope to move on? Because the looks of your streets today would suggest that the people don't believe you have. 10 days in a row. Have you apologized sufficiently? And what will end these demonstrations as long as you're still in office?
Well, again, I have apologized
sufficiently
to some of them. My effort is to apologize to all of them. No,
well, you can do that here if you want to have a mea culpa. If you want to have a mea culpa, you're welcome to do that here.
Yeah, I've done so. I apologize.
So you don't want to do
to
so
all
again.
The people I've offended. So to Ricky Martin, to Melissa.
What about the survivors of the dead people who were made light of? Of course, that as well. I apologize for all of the things that I have said. Why'd you say those things? What was it that inspired you to say those things to other officials in such a cavalier, dismissive way? Do you remember what it was over that? It wasn't just a day. It wasn't just a week. It wasn't just a month. It was 2 months, 900 pages in December and January of that sort of language from the governor, by the way, about his own people.
Well, again, some of that language is not mine. Some of it was discussed by other members within that.
Because it was someone else who said, you're right, because I want to clarify that, and I apologize, because it was someone else who said, oh, I'd like to shoot the female mayor of San Juan. And then it was you who said, oh, you'd be doing me a great favor.
No. Yep. So again, everything that was said, I assume responsibility for. I apologize for it, but I just wanted to establish I am in a position to apologize to everybody, to make an effort for reconciliation, and now devoid and disconnected of the political whims. My focus is to make sure that the policy that we have enacted moves forward.
Those of us who live back here stateside have watched the horrors that have ravaged your island, and many of us, I know I have, and a lot of people on my staff have looked and just have wept for your people. To see all that your people have gone through and the difficulty in getting everything fixed, the months and months without power and water, the devastation of the tourism economy, at least for a while, seeing all of that really made us very sad and wanting to help in some way. I know a lot of people around here have donated.
Yeah.
Do you love Puerto Rico?
Yeah. I do love Puerto Rico.
Well,
let me just add something. I was there.
If you love Puerto Rico and you look out on the streets and you see that these hundreds of thousands of people, excuse me, sir, if you see these hundreds of thousands of people who also love Puerto Rico and have looked at the governor's office and said, that's a man who can no longer lead us, because, Governor, that's what they're saying today. They're saying the way for us to move on is to start fresh. We need new representation, and we want the governor to resign. And they've protested for 10 straight days. Today, the largest demonstration potentially in the history of the island. And you stand with firm resolve and talk about accomplishments. Do you hear them? Do you hear them and care what they're saying today? Or is the cavalier attitude from the text messages sort of living in the background again today? I ask not for myself, but for the people who are on a hot, wet day in San Juan and across that island today saying, We want him gone.
Yeah, no, I hear them, and it's part of my introspection, and I will continue to hear them. I will continue to make my decisions and work with the people of Puerto Rico. It is an island of love that I love. It is a people I love. I've left every ounce of my heart, everything that I've done so that we can recover properly. I was here, sir, during that process when there was no food, there was no access to water, there were no roads, working as hard as I could with a lot of people so that we can get those emergency aid to the people of Puerto Rico.
What about the corruption of all those dollars? Why did all that money go to politically connected people? Why wasn't there better oversight? Why are thousands and thousands and thousands of people long after this hurricane still sitting with blue tarps and not able to live their lives? Some of them don't have the basic necessities of life all this time later, and you've gotten billions and billions and billions of dollars from the mainland. You know, the people of Puerto Rico are asking tough questions. They've been doing so for a while. And most of them say in your newspapers today and on our cameras today that the text messages are not the reason, they're the final straw. They believe your administration has been corrupt and cavalier about their own existence, and they want you to leave, and you're refusing to do so.
The largest protest on the island in decades. Overnight, thousands gathered outside Governor Ricardo Roselló's mansion and called for him to resign immediately. The demonstrations turned violent as protesters clashed with police. Many ran when the tear gas was fired into the crowd. David Begnaud was in the middle of the protest last night and joins us now with the latest on this story from San Juan. David, have you heard any word on how long we can expect these protests to continue?
No, we haven't, but I have asked protesters if they're getting tired, and they say not at all. In fact, every time the governor gives an interview like he did yesterday with Fox, it adds fuel to their fire. It was a wild and chaotic night. Let me walk you through it. So you got broken glass. This is the scene in many parts of San Juan. There's new graffiti on the street. Excuse us, sir. If you look at this vehicle, this is the car that caught fire last night. Kenton, show the viewers, if you can, that's the tear gas canister right there that led the back of this car to burn. In fact, on the ground this morning, you can see some more of the canisters fired by police. This man, Robbie, is the gentleman whose the car belongs to him. He had been participating in the protest yesterday during the day, but he was with a friend last night when police fired tear gas at protesters and one of the canisters landed in his vehicle. Here's that video.
It happened right around midnight. You see from about 50 yards away that tear gas canister come flying through the air and right into the back of that SUV. Tear gas was first deployed by police around 11 p.m., and that sent protesters running. The Puerto Rico Police Department resorted to force after plastic water bottles were continuously thrown at them. But just a few troublemakers ended up ruining the night for a majority of peaceful people. We spoke to Elliot Rivera about why he's here protesting.
No parties, no colors, just Puerto Ricans fighting for our rights.
We noticed that the front line is filled with very young faces, some as young as 15. Kania Nunez is 21.
Tell me why you're here.
I'm here because I have a daughter, and she needs a future, a good future with good government. And right now, they are stealing our money.
Hundreds of thousands of demonstrators kicked off the week by shutting down a major highway, and the crowd size was massive. Puerto Ricans are frustrated about corruption, the debt crisis, and a slow recovery following Hurricane Maria. They're also upset about leaked chat messages, where the governor and some of his associates made sexist and homophobic remarks and mocked constituents, including those who died during Hurricane Maria.
Puerto Rico police have just arrived to take pictures of the vehicle that burned last night after police fired tear gas into the back of it. Tony, I should tell you, yesterday in that Fox News interview that Ricardo Roselló gave to Shepard Smith, Shep asked him who on the island supports you, and he kind of fumbled and couldn't name anybody, and then he said the mayor of San Sebastian. We called the mayor of San Sebastian, and the mayor told CBS News he does not support the governor.
Wow, David. And so the answer appears to be no support, no official support anyway at this moment. Incredible footage there and incredible reporting for us. David Begnaud in Puerto Rico. David, thank you very much.